The market does not wait for anyone. I learned that before I turned 30, long before gray streaks found their way into my hair, long before my knees began to ache every cold harmattan morning. My name is Mama Titi, but the name my mother gave me whispered over my newborn face in a single room in Mushin. It means wealth is mixed with honor. She gave me that name as a prayer. Life spent many years trying to prove her wrong. Every morning I was up before the first cock crew. I would lie still for just one quiet moment, listening to my daughter Amara breathe asleep on the mat beside me, her small hands curled under her chin like someone who did not yet know how heavy the world could be. In those seconds before I rose, something would tighten inside my chest, a love so fierce it nearly hurt, wrapped around a fear that I was never doing enough. Then I would stand. There was no time for anything else. Tomatoes had to be sorted, baskets had to be loaded. The road to Mile 12 Market was long, and traders who arrived late found no good spots, no good customers, and absolutely no pity. "Mama, are you going again?" Amara's sleepy voice would drift up from the mat, her eyes barely open. "Sleep, my daughter. I will be back before school ends." "But it is still night outside." "Night is when winners begin. Sleep now." I would hear her settle back with a small sigh. Then I would lift my baskets, step out into the dark compound, and begin. People who have never carried heavy loads on their heads do not understand that weight. Not just the physical heaviness, though that is real enough to burn your neck and break your back before noon. The heavier weight is invisible. It is the knowledge that every tomato in every basket is already a calculation. If everything sold today, Amara would eat tonight, pay school fees next week, and buy the textbook her teacher requested. But if the rains came and spoiled the tomatoes, if customers haggled until profit disappeared, if a careless driver splashed mud across my display and ruined everything, then we ate garri and water, and I found a way to manage tomorrow. That calculation lived inside my chest every single day. I remember the first time I felt its full weight. Amara was 6 years old, just starting primary school. Her uniform was second-hand, bought from Mama Sade near the market gate. I had washed it 4 times, scrubbing the collar raw, fighting to return it to white. The yellowness refused to leave. I ironed it as flat as I could anyway, folded it neatly, and told myself she was too small to notice. She noticed. She said nothing. She only looked at the uniform quietly, then at me, then looked away. That one look from my 6-year-old daughter burned a fire into my chest that nothing in this life has ever managed to put out. Not poverty, not ridicule, not aching shoulders and burning feet, not the voices that would come later, the market women, the neighbors, the people who enjoyed watching others struggle and calling it reality. I picked up my baskets. I walked out into the darkness, and somewhere on that long road to market, before the sun had even decided to rise, I made myself a promise. I did not yet know how hard that promise would be to keep, but I meant every word of it. The first time I heard them laughing about me, I was standing right there. That is the cruelest kind of mockery. Not the behind-the-back whisper that reaches you days later, softened by distance. The kind where they see you, know you can hear them, and do not bother to lower their voices. That kind of laughter is designed to enter you. It wants to find your weak places and live there. It was a Tuesday, I remember, because Tuesdays were when the wholesalers came and prices shifted and you had to bargain quickly or lose your margins. I was arranging my tomatoes, stacking them carefully into neat pyramids the way I always did, because presentation mattered even in Mile 12, even for tomatoes. When Mama Chidima's voice rose above the market noise, You see that woman? The one with the fine arrangement. Her voice was loud and warm with amusement. She is using tomato money to send her daughter to secondary school. Secondary school? Laughter from the women around her. Not gentle laughter, the sharp kind. Which school? Another voice asked. That government school near Ketu. She is even buying textbooks for a girl whose mother cannot afford her own market stall. Laughter. Someone clicked their tongue in that particular way that manages to say everything without using words. She is wasting her time, Mama Chidima continued, her voice softening slightly into something that was almost kind, which was somehow worse than cruelty. These are our children. What will education do for them? Better to teach the girl to sell beside her. 2 of them here, they will earn more. I kept stacking tomatoes. I did not look up. I kept my hands moving, my face still, my breathing even. But inside, my stomach had turned to stone. That evening, I came home to find Amara sitting on the front step with her school bag on her lap, her eyes fixed on nothing. She was 12 years old. She had her father's serious eyes. Emmanuel had passed 3 years before from an illness we could not afford to treat properly, and some mornings I still reached for him in the dark before remembering. What happened? I asked. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, without looking at me, "They called me the tomato girl again." Who? Blessing and her friends. They said my lunch smells like the market. They said I only have 1 pair of shoes because my mother is a tomato seller, and that is the highest I will ever reach. I sat down beside her and took her hand in mine, my hand that was rough and stained and older than my years. "Amara, look at me." She turned slowly. Her eyes were dry. She had already decided not to cry, and that broke my heart far more than tears would have done. "Amara, do you know why they say those things?" She shook her head. "Because small people need to step on something to feel tall. That is the only power they have. But your job, your only job, is to grow so tall that their stepping cannot reach you." She looked at me for a long moment. "Yes, Mama," she said quietly. She went inside. I remained on that step alone as evening darkened around me, and I let myself feel everything I had refused to feel at the market. Every word, every laugh, every click of every tongue. Then I dried my face, went inside, and started cooking. Tomorrow was Wednesday. Wednesday meant early rising. The market was not going to wait. The school fees notice arrived on a Friday afternoon. I came home from the market with sore feet and 200 naira more than expected. A small miracle, the kind that makes you briefly believe things might be turning. And I found the envelope on the mat just inside our door, slipped under it by someone from the school. Amara had placed a cup of water on top of it carefully, as if hoping the weight might make it less real. I noticed. I picked it up and sat on the chair with the cracked plastic leg. I opened the envelope the way you open something you already suspect will hurt you. The fees had increased, not by a small amount, by 30%. New development levy, new laboratory charge, a list of items that pushed the total to a figure sitting at the very top of what I could possibly imagine managing, and slightly above it. I sat there for a long time. Amara came out from the back room where she had been doing her homework. She stood in the doorway watching me. She was 13 now, and she had grown quiet in the way intelligent children grew quiet when they begin to understand that some conversations carry weight. "What does it say?" asked. "Nothing serious, school information." She looked at me the way she always looked at me when she knew I was protecting her from something. Then she crossed the room, sat beside me, and gently took the letter from my hand. She read it in silence. When she finished, she folded it neatly and placed it on her knee. "I can stop," she said, simply, calmly. "I can come to the market with you. We will manage together." Something inside me cracked. Not broke, cracked. Like a wall that takes a hard blow but does not fall. Because I was not going to fall. Not here, not in front of her. I said, Amara, did I ask for your opinion? She pressed her lips together. Her eyes were wet, but she nodded and went back to the room. I sat alone with the letter and the numbers and the silence, and I began to think, really think, the way I had trained myself during Emmanuel's illness, during the 3 days after his burial when I had nothing and a daughter to feed. Thinking that does not allow panic, that moves through problems the way water moves through rock, slowly with purpose. I thought about Mama Kolade, who lent small amounts at interest. I thought about my sister Ngozi in Ibadan, asking me to come stay with her. I thought about the gold earrings Emmanuel placed on my ears himself on our wedding morning, his hands shaking slightly with joy. The only gold I owned, the only thing I had never considered selling. I held the letter. I thought about Amara's face. Then I stood up, walked to the corner where I kept my private things, and I opened the small tin. It was the hardest, easy decision I had ever made. The next morning, I went to see Mama Kolade before the market opened. She was a large woman with a wide compound and a small heart for mercy, which was not an insult, only the truth of her business. She had been lending money in our area for 15 years and had survived by never letting kindness interfere with profit. I had borrowed from her twice before. Both times I had repaid in full. I was hoping that history counted for something. It counted for something. 300,000 naira. She repeated the amount carefully, measuring risk the way a doctor measures a dose. That is a serious sum, Adunala. I know. At my rate, repayment will take how long? As long as it takes. I have never defaulted. She looked at me over the rim of her glasses. Collateral? I placed the earrings on the table between us. Small gold pieces that Emmanuel had pressed on my ears himself on our wedding morning, laughing because his hands were shaking. The last physical thing I had of that day. Mama Kolade looked at them. Then she looked at me. For school fees, she asked. For my daughter's school fees. She was quiet for a moment that stretched much longer than it was. She finally said, I have a daughter. She's a doctor in Abuja now. She paused. Her school fees almost finished me too. She picked up the earrings and put them in her drawer. Then she counted out the money. I walked home with the cash folded inside my blouse, pressed to my chest, and I cried for exactly 3 minutes. I counted them. I gave myself 3 minutes to grieve the earrings, to miss Emmanuel, to feel the unfairness of a world where a mother must choose between her memories and her daughter's future. Then I stopped. 3 minutes was all I could afford. I paid the fees that same day. Amara did not know where the money came from. She asked once, quietly, whether I was certain. I told her the Lord provided and that she should focus on her studies. She did. That year, she came home with her first report card from the new term. She placed it on the table without a word and stepped back to watch my face. First position in her class. Best result in mathematics. Her teacher had written in red ink at the bottom, Amara is exceptional. Please continue to encourage her. I read that line 4 times. Then I held the paper to my chest and I closed my eyes. And in the quiet behind my eyelids, I spoke to Emmanuel the way I did sometimes When things happened, he should have been there to see. You would have been so proud, I told him. She got your mind. The following week at the market, the conversation was different. I heard she passed, Mama Chidima said to the woman beside her. Not to me, in the way that means you want the person to hear, but do not want to face them directly. First position. But for what? First position in a government school is like winning a race in your own backyard. The real world will show her something different. Her companion nodded. I arranged my tomatoes. I said nothing, but something quiet and firm inside me made a careful note. Years move differently when you are poor. For wealthy people, I imagine time passes like a smooth road, not without bumps, but generally forward, generally clear. For us, time was a winding market path, sometimes doubling back on itself, sometimes blocked entirely, requiring detours through mud and noise before you found your way again. But it kept moving. No matter what, the years kept moving. Amara grew, not just in height, though she grew in height too, passing my shoulder, then my ear, then my forehead, until one morning I realized I had to tilt my chin to look her properly in the eyes. She grew in ways I had not expected and could not fully take credit for. A quiet, burning intelligence that organized itself behind her eyes like a fire that knew exactly where it was going. A discipline that seems to come from somewhere deeper than anything I had taught her, as if difficulty itself was her teacher and she was its most devoted student. She studied every night. I mean every night. Not the kind of studying that happens when a parent is watching. She would wait until I had gone to sleep, then light the candle she kept under her bed. I found the wax drippings once and said nothing, and continue reading until her body finally forced her to stop. In her SS2 year, something shifted. A teacher at her school, Mr. Balogu, a thin man with thick glasses and a loud passion for mathematics, noticed what was happening inside Amara's mind. He began staying after school with her. He brought past questions. He entered her into competitions I had never heard of. Then one evening, he called me on a neighbor's phone, and he said words I have never forgotten. Madam, your daughter is not ordinary. Whatever you are doing for her, please do not stop. I held that phone long after he finished speaking. I wanted to tell him I was barely holding on. I wanted to tell him about the earrings and the loans and the mornings I ate nothing so Amara could have a proper lunch. I wanted to describe what it costs to be someone's mother when that someone is going to be extraordinary and the world has not yet agreed to be fair about it. Instead, I said, "Thank you, sir. I will not stop." And I meant it. At school, the cruelty had changed shape over the years. The open mockery of childhood had become something more refined, the kind of exclusion that operates through silence, through social territories, never stated but enforced with precision. Amara was not invited to certain parties. She was not included in certain conversations. Girls who wore new clothes and went to salons discussed things in front of her she had no access to. But something interesting was also happening. People had started quietly noticing her results. Not loudly, pride would not allow that, but in the small hesitations before a familiar joke at her expense. In the moment when someone would begin an insult and then trail off, as if uncertain it would land the same way it used to. The ground was shifting beneath the feet of her critics, and they could feel it even if they could not name it. Amara was growing in the dark, the way some plants do, steadily, powerfully, toward a light that only she could see. And through every single year of it, she never once asked me to stop selling tomatoes. Not once. I need to be honest about something. I have told you the strong parts of this story, The mornings I rose before the sun, the fierce determination, the quiet battles won by refusing to acknowledge defeat. All of that is true, every word. But there was one night, one specific night in Amara's final year of secondary school, when all of that strength left me completely. When I sat on the floor of our room at 2 in the morning and had nothing left, no fight, no prayer, just the hollow silence of a woman who had finally run out of road. It had been building for months. The loans had accumulated. The interest from Mama Kolade's money, which I had been managing carefully, was disrupted when the market flooded in August and I lost 2 weeks of trading. A small weakness had visited my left hand. Nothing serious enough for a doctor, I told myself, though the truth was I could not afford one. And for a full month, carrying baskets was harder and counting change was slower. Then came the WAEC registration forms, external examination fees, practical fees, university entrance forms. Stacked on the table, they looked like an invoice from a world that had decided I had given enough and wanted to test whether I had more. I called my sister Ngozi. "Come to Ibadan," she said, for what must have been the 15th time. "Bring Amara. She can write her exams from here. She has a school here, a teacher here. She cannot start over." "Adonola, you cannot kill yourself." "I am not killing myself." "You are, slowly. What will your daughter do if her mother collapses in that market?" I had no answer for that. After the call, I found myself sitting on the floor. I had not made it to the chair. The room was dark and quiet. I sat there and let myself think about everything. About Emmanuel, about the earrings, about 17 years of baskets and calculations, and the laughter of people who used the size of their comfort to measure the size of my worth. And for the first time, a thought entered me that I had never allowed before. Maybe they are right. Maybe I am being foolish. Maybe the tomato seller's daughter should just sell tomatoes. I let it come. I did not push it away because I had learned by then that the thoughts you push away only grow stronger. I sat with it at 2 in the morning on the floor while Amara slept. And then I heard her breathe. That same slow, peaceful rhythm from when she was 6 years old. My daughter, still trusting the night, still resting, still gathering herself for tomorrow, never knowing what her mother was carrying in the dark so that she would not have to. I got up off the floor. I went to the table and looked at the forms. I picked up a pen. There was a way. There was always a way. Not easy, not fair, never the path you imagined, but it was there. It had always been there, waiting for me to stop sitting on the floor and start looking for it. I wrote down a plan. Then I slept for 4 hours, and in the morning, I went back to work. The examination results came on a Wednesday morning in July. I remember the heat of that day clearly. The specific, heavy kind of heat that sits on Lagos like a pressing hand, making the air itself feel thick. I was at the market when Amara called me on the small Nokia I kept for emergencies, the one I recharged with 100 naira at a time. "Mama?" Just that one word. And from the sound of it, I could not tell whether the world was ending or beginning. "Amara, talk to me." A pause. Then, "I passed everything." "Everything?" "Everything, Mama. All 9 subjects. A's and B's. My aggregate is strong enough for any course, any university." I stood in the middle of the market, surrounded by noise and people and the smell of tomatoes and pepper and exhaust, and I felt the world around me become suddenly distant. as if someone had moved me slightly outside of it. "Say it again," I whispered. "I passed, Mama. I passed." I pressed the phone against my ear, and I let out a sound that was not quite crying and not quite laughing, but lived somewhere between the two. The sound of a woman who has carried something enormously heavy for so long that when she finally sets it down, her body does not know how to react. Women nearby turned to look at me. Let them look. But what Amara had not yet told me, what she only revealed when I got home that evening, sitting at the table with her result printout and a look on her face that mixed nervousness with quiet pride, was the other thing, the thing she had been keeping for 3 months. She placed a second document beside the results. I looked at it, then at her, then at it again. An admission letter from the University of Lagos, medicine and surgery, and beside it, folded neatly, was another letter from a scholarship board I had never heard of, whose name I had to read 3 times before it entered my understanding. Full scholarship, tuition, accommodation, monthly stipend. Amara had applied in secret. She found the scholarship through the school's computer lab, filled everything out herself during free periods, asked Mr. Balogun for a recommendation letter without telling me, submitted her application, and sat the aptitude test on a Saturday she told me was extra lessons. She had kept it for 3 months because she did not want me to hope for something that might not come. "Why didn't you tell me?" My voice was barely a whisper. She looked at me with those steady, serious eyes, her father's eyes. "Because you have carried enough, Mama," she said. "This one, I wanted to carry myself." I looked at my daughter, this person I had sorted tomatoes for, carried baskets for, sold my wedding earrings for, wept on floors in the dark for, and I understood something I had not fully understood before. She had not been a passenger in this journey. She had been building something of her own the entire time, quietly, without force, in the background of every early morning and every mocked lunch and every worn-out school shoe. She had been becoming. There was still one thing left, graduation. And none of us were ready for what that day would bring. Graduation day arrived the way important things often do. Quietly at first, and then all at once. I woke before my alarm. The room was still gray with early light, and I lay still for a moment, counting years the way I used to count burdens. 17 years of baskets. 17 years of calculations done in my head before sunrise. 17 years of arranging tomatoes into careful pyramids while other people's laughter floated above me like it had a right to stay there. I got up. I put on my good lace, the one I had been saving for a special occasion. Today was special enough. The ceremony was held in the school hall, which could barely contain the crowd. Families arrived in good cars, wearing bright clothes, carrying cameras. I arrived by bus, holding my handbag in both hands, and found a seat near the back. I saw Mama Chidima 3 rows ahead, dressed beautifully. She glanced back, spotted me, and gave the kind of nod people give when they have already decided how a story ends. The ceremony began. Speeches, certificates, names called one by one while families cheered and cameras flashed. And then the principal, a small, precise woman with a large voice, stepped to the microphone. "We as an institution, we recognize one student whose results this year were the highest in this school's 23-year history, placing her in the top 1% of the entire state. This student has also been awarded a full scholarship to study medicine and surgery at the University of Lagos. We ask that her mother please join her on stage." Silence spread across the hall. They called Amara's name. She walked across that stage with her back straight and her chin level, her father's serious eyes looking out at everything and needing nothing. Then they called mine. I walked up those steps, me, Mama Titi, Adonla, whose name means wealth mixed with honor, the tomato seller, the woman who came by bus. I walked to the center of that stage with my handbag and my goodlies and my rough hands and my aching knees, and I stood beside my daughter in front of every person who had ever whispered our names. The principal shook Amara's hand and pinned a badge to her gown. Then she turned to me and shook my hand too. "You raised this young woman," she said into the microphone, looking at me. "On behalf of this institution, we honor you." The hall erupted. I did not look for Mama Chidima's face. I had not come here for that. I had come here for this moment, for my daughter, for every dark morning that had tried to convince me to turn back. After the ceremony, walking into the afternoon sun, a hand touched my arm. I turned. Mama Chidima stood there, and for the first time in all the years I had known her, she could not find her words. "Congratulations," she managed, her voice small and unfamiliar in its smallness. "Thank you," I said, and I kept walking. That evening, Amara and I sat on our front step, as we had sat on so many evenings before, but differently now. The air around us lighter, as if something heavy had finally been lifted from it. She rested her head on my shoulder. "I told you, Mama," she said softly. "Told me what?" "That night is when winners start." A laugh rose out of me, full, free, and real, because she had been listening every single morning in the dark. She had taken every word I gave her and carried it all the way here. Where you come from does not decide where you are going. What decides it is the courage to keep moving when the world expects you to stop. If this story moved you, please give it a like and subscribe to this channel so you never miss another story like this one. Share it with someone who needs it today. A struggling mother, a mocked child, anyone who has been told they are not enough. And in the comments below, tell us, who is your Mama Titi? Who carried you when you could not carry yourself? We are reading every single comment. Your story matters, and we are listening.